everything you do. Compete on the practice field, compete in the weight room, compete in the classroom, compete in everything.
They need to win the drill, win explosive, move forward. So I hope
compete in every single aspect of your life.
Here's what's great about college football this year.
40, 30, 20, 15, 10.
A lot of time, runs out of time, and down he goes. Touchdown!
Penn State, 93 yards.
Unrivaled, the official podcast of Penn State football.
Welcome into the Unrivaled Podcast, the official podcast of Penn State football. Penn State picks up their first victory of the season as they knock off Idaho in convincing fashion, 79-7, which those 79 points versus Idaho mark the most for the Nittany Lions since 1991, when they scored 81 points in an 81-0 victory over Cincinnati on their home opener. Also, those 79 points are the second most since 1921 and are tied for the sixth most in program history. Without further ado, we're going to welcome in our newest guest, number 17, Garrett Taylor. Garrett, how are you doing?
I'm doing good.
How much fun was game one?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Just getting back out there in Beaver Stadium, in front of 100,000+ fans, and finally getting to go against someone else. We hit each other a ton during camp, and it gets a little bit tiresome, but we finally got to go out there against someone else, and I feel like we gave the fans a pretty good show.
Do you ever have those emotions when you run out of the tunnel for the first time? You only get to do it so many more times in your career here at Penn State, but is there still a certain amount of chills that kind of run through your body on the home opener?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to contain that. It's a special environment, and especially walking out as a captain was kind of a new experience for me, obviously. So I definitely got the chills, just because we walked out before the team did, and walking on the sideline and getting ready to go out for the coin toss was pretty surreal. But yeah, there's nothing like turning that corner out of the locker room and seeing Beaver Stadium open up. It doesn't get old, that's for sure.
We'll jump back to that game in a second, but when you found out you were going to be a captain, what did that moment mean to you?
It meant the world to me, especially being held in that high regard with my teammates, coaching staff, support staff, everyone in this building, obviously thought, enough of me, to put me in that position to, be able to lead this team. So I was extremely honored. It's a long-standing tradition, at Penn State of being a captain and being able to lead, this program into a successful season. So it meant a lot to me, a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication went into, shaping myself and molding myself, to who I am today. And the fact that people, thought that, that's what a captain should be, meant a lot to me. So I took that to heart, and it meant a lot, and I really appreciated it.
Was that one of your personal goals when you came into Penn State? And obviously you look at the captains that came before you and the ones that are going to come after you, but was that something that you can check off your list in a certain right?
I would say in a certain way. I wouldn't say I came in saying to myself that I want to be a captain. I think I just wanted to come in and, work hard and, kind of earn my way onto the field, which happened. And, I would be lying if I didn't say I saw that opportunity coming, during the off season, especially coaches telling me I needed to, step into a new leadership role. That's something I try to embrace, just starting to become more vocal. But, when it did happen, I think it was an accomplishment that I was very proud of. But I don't think I would say that was like a goal of mine is to be captain. But when it did happen, I was very happy it did.
You guys put up 79 points this past Saturday and limit them to 7, under 150 yards of total offense for Idaho. Now, I know everybody looks at that 79 in the offensive side of things and says, wow, what's going on up there in Happy Valley? But to also limit a team to 7 points, what stuck out to you about that game?
Starting on the defensive side, I think, first of all, we just played, great team defense. We really minimized, our mental errors. We were all locked in with the calls, and, everyone was out there executing. And I feel like we tackled well, too. That's, a big thing with first games, especially we don't get as much live work now as we used to in camp. So, coming out tackling well. Everyone was running to the ball. I think that was, huge for us. And, obviously we have a very talented defense, a front seven that's scary with guys like Etor, Micah, I could, name everyone. And then, our back four, we have a lot of length and a lot of speed. And I think all the pieces, kind of came together yesterday. And I think, everyone got to see, a glimpse of what our defense, can be for this season. So it was exciting just to get out there and kind of put it all together.
How about on the offensive side of things? One of the obviously the storyline is that 5 different back score for you guys. You put up over 600 yards of total offense, and I know you don't necessarily get to see everything that's going on the field because you're doing your thing defensively to get ready for the next possession that you're going to have to go out there. But when you have an offensive explosion day like that, is there something that you look at and say, wow?
Yeah, that was crazy. Honestly, fun to watch. Like you said, we're pretty locked in on the sideline, but, you get a chance here or there, try to glimpse up at the scoreboard or at the big Jumbotron, and it felt like every time I looked up, someone was running into the end zone. So that was cool. Like you said, 5 different backs scored, and, we have a super talented backfield, with guys like Ricky and Journey, and, our young guys, Noah Kane ran well. Obviously, Devin Ford had that super long run, and then, a guy who I think everyone was excited about when he scored was Nick Uri.
And it's going to be Uri again. Bounces to his right to the 5, keeps the legs driving. Now to his left, inside to the goal line. Touchdown, Penn State. What a fabulous run by Nick Uri. His first career Penn State touchdown.
I go against him every day in practice. He's a scout team guy for us, but, he works his butt off, and, he knows his role on the team, and he embraces it, and gives us a good look every day on scout team. So everyone on the team couldn't be more happy for him just to see all of his hard work pay off and kind of culminate in that moment where he got into the end zone on a gritty run. So that was cool to see, and I'm just happy for the guy.
Once again, Penn State collects their first victory of the season as they knock off Idaho 79-7, and they will now shift their attention towards Buffalo, which will be a 7:30 p.m. kick inside Beaver Stadium or on Fox, and as always, the Penn State Sports Network, as you can hear Steve Jones on the play-by-play call there. But let's jump off the football field for a little while here, Garrett, and tell me about Richmond, Virginia, where you grew up.
Yeah, Richmond, Virginia, born and raised. All I really knew growing up, my dad was born and raised in Richmond as well. So that place is pretty special to me. I went to an all-boys private school from when I was in first grade till I graduated high school, which was a little different, but, my graduating class was about like 80-something guys. It was small, but we were close, and some of those guys I'd been with since first grade. So, I've been going to school with them for, 12 years. So it built some pretty cool friendships that, I still have today. And that's something I really appreciated. And then just, Richmond for me, obviously where, my sports career started. I played all sorts of sports growing up. I played lacrosse. I wrestled for a little bit. I did baseball, basketball, obviously football. But, I think my first sport I kind of fell in love with was baseball because, that's what my dad, loved to play when he was growing up. And, I just remember, dragging my dad to, like, this little league field that was, close to our house and, making him take, BP with me in the cage and until it was dark out and he could barely see. So he used to have to, drag me off the field. But, me and my dad did a lot just, together in terms of, growing up in sports. He would take me to all my tournaments, be at all my games. So that was a lot of fun. And my sister actually was a really good basketball player. So me and her went at it a lot in basketball. And our one-on-one games used to be, like, pretty competitive, and then I got, like, bigger than her. So
then it wasn't very fair.
No, then it wasn't fair, and I would always win, and she used to get, like, mad at me. She'd be like, you got to let me score. Like, you got to let me score. I'd be like, why would I do that? But it ended up helping her out a lot. Like, she ended up being, like, 1,000-point scorer in her high school career and then went on to play, like, D2 ball for a little bit. So got a pretty athletic family.
it sounds like your relationship with your parents means a ton to you, but how would you say the culmination of taking BP till it's dark out, the countless reps out on the practice field with your mom or dad, how do you think all that stuff has shaped your relationship with them into what it is today?
You know, obviously I have a great relationship with, you know, both of my parents. My mom and my dad, you know, sacrificed a lot for me, you know, growing up, for me and my sister and my brother. But, you know, my dad and I are super close just through sports. And he's always shown me, you know, unconditional love. And that's something, you know, as I've gotten older, I've come to, you know, really appreciate. He's always made time for me. You know, like I said, he's taking me to tournaments, and that's AAU basketball tournaments, 3-4 hours away. You know, waking up at 5-6 o'clock in the morning, getting the car ready. You know, spending weekends in hotels when I'm sure he had, you know, work and stuff to worry about. But, you know, me and my dad are really close, and for anyone who's met my dad, he's like super wise. And it's something like sometimes I think I take for granted because he'll talk my ear off a lot. Like he goes on and in terms of just like giving me, you know, words of wisdom. And like we got him an iPhone like recently, so now he'll just like text me like paragraphs of stuff. But it's really cool just to know that he's always thinking about me, and you know, those words of encouragement, you know, really help sometimes. You know, because you know, being up here away from your family is hard. So you know, just staying in contact with my dad, you know, has helped me through a lot. You know, especially you know when I was young and I was a freshman up here, you know, trying to find my footing. You know, I would call my dad and we would talk for, you know, a couple of hours if that's what it took. But, you know, at the end of the day when I hung up the phone, you know, he had me feeling a lot better, you know, about everything that was going on. And, you know, that kind of just helped me, you know, push through a lot of stuff and helped me end up, you know, where I am today.
What are some of those conversations like today still, now that you're one of the vets on this team, and obviously you're going to shift your attention towards a future career at the hopefully the NFL level and beyond after this season, but what are some of those conversations like today when you did talk to him after the first game of the season or during fall camp or whatever it is?
It's really cool. You know, the first thing I can tell he's extremely proud of me. You know, and that's something, you know, that means a lot to me. Just, you know, to be able to make my dad proud is, you know, something I've always, you know, shot for. And just to see that, you know, that pride he has in me and how far I've come is, you know, something that's really special. And, you know, something we always focus on is just, you know, continuous improvement, I think is, you know, a big thing. We always talk about just, you know, what can I do, you know, to make sure, you know, that I'm learning from, you know, good games, or even if I have, you know, not so good of a game, you know, what are things I can do to, you know, always be improving. And something we talk about a lot, you know, you said, you know, hopefully, you know, after the end of the season with my, you know, shot at the NFL, but we try to focus on the process a lot, not so much as, you know, focusing on the end goal, but, you know, taking care of, you know, the present moment and just, you know, doing that week after week. And then eventually, you know, the end product will, you know, take care of itself. And that's, you know, something I've taken to heart. And I think that's how I approach a lot of things now is, you know, not so much trying to worry about, you know, the end goal, but the process along the way, and then just, you know, letting the result take care of itself.
People often talk about the stress of football, college athletics in general, and some people just see you guys as players with a jersey and a helmet on with a number. They don't necessarily know who you are outside of football, which is part of the goal of this whole podcast. But when you talk about stress and dealing with stress, obviously it sounds like mom and dad are an avenue to kind of be able to release some of that tension and get their input, as is most of you guys. But how else do you deal with the stress of day-to-day repetition within this sport?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, just being in this environment and, you know, there's a lot of pressure, you know, a lot of high expectations that you put on yourself, a lot of high expectations that, you know, we have as a team for this program and where we want to take it. So if you're not careful, you know, it can get a little bit overwhelming. And, what I try to do just to, handle that is, when I'm in Lash and, when I'm doing, extra film study on my own, I'm locked into football. But, the second I get a chance to kind of, get away from that, I really take advantage of that. I'll spend time in my room. I like to read. Growing up, I read a lot of books. Like, I read all the Harry Potter books. I had a bookshelf, full of books that I read. Just it's reading is something that kind of allows me to shut off the outside world for however long I'm reading, and kind of immerse myself into what I'm reading, and it's a good escape for me. It's really peaceful. It's really engaging. I think we read a book, and it's kind of funny because it's not tied into football, but Coach Banks gave us a book to read. It's called Chop Wood, Carry Water. And we read that this summer as a safety room. And it's just a book that focuses on, the process of attaining, I would say greatness. And it tells it through a story of this, young apprentice who wants to become, a samurai archer, and it kind of explores his journey and his ups and downs and his struggle through that process. So just being able to read that this summer was kind of cool, and helped me out with my process of just training this summer. But yeah, definitely reading helps me out a ton.
Tell me about high school football. So you played at St. Christopher's High School in general, but what was the high school football experience like for you? And I know it was a little bit different of a journey with your injury your senior season, but take me back from the time you arrived at high school till that senior year.
All right, so going from the beginning, it was like pretty cool because it pretty much starts in 8th grade. So in 8th grade, we had just started this new thing where 8th graders could play up on JV, which was allowed since we were a private school. So I was like the first kid in my school to play up on JV. So I started at quarterback as an 8th grader on JV.
GT, the quarterback.
I know. I tell Coach Ronnie a lot. I need some snaps back there at quarterback, but I don't think he takes me seriously. But yeah, so kind of playing up on JV as an 8th grader kind of, set the table for me as, I was expected to, play varsity as a freshman. And so, camp rolls around, and the only position that was really open for a spot on varsity that I could, step into and start right away was cornerback. And, I had played a little bit of safety, obviously, but it wasn't like a position I was like serious about. But, me wanting to compete and, play on varsity, I was like, all right, if this position is open, I'm obviously going to play it. So I ended up, throughout camp, I played really well and earned, that starting spot at corner. And it was my first varsity, like, high school football game ever, like, first start. At this school called like Trinity Episcopal, like one of our, I wouldn't say rivals, but they didn't like us and we didn't like them. So, everyone was coming up to me like before the game, pregame, like, are you ready? Are you nervous? Which I was, like a freshman being on varsity. I was like, oh God, like, I don't know how this is going to go. It can either go really well or really bad. But that game, I ended up having 2 defensive touchdowns. I took back 2 fumble recoveries for touchdowns in the same game. So that was like when it kind of clicked in my mind. I was like, okay, like I could maybe like do something with this football thing. And it was on the evening news that night. I had it recorded on my TV forever. Like I used to go back and just like replay that clip over, like the clips over and over again. And it was really cool. Just, my dad was at the game. Obviously I mentioned him earlier, but him being able to see that. And, after that, after my freshman season, we went to the state championship game, but lost. But after that is when I kind of started to take football really seriously and started to do, extra training in the off season, position specific. Like I did a lot of DB work, just, get smooth in my back pedal, making sure my hips were fluid, all that stuff. And my sophomore year is when I started to get like interest from, colleges, which was early in the recruiting process. And especially at my school, a lot of guys, went to small schools, in Virginia, but not a lot of guys went and played like D1 football from my school. So I started to get interest, my sophomore year, and my first offer actually came like the week of our last game, like our huge rivalry game. Like a coach came in, like sat down. It was funny. Like he sat down in my coach's office, my high school coach's office, and he was like, we're really, really interested in you. And he I was shaking his hand as I was walking out, and he like gave me a wink, and I was like playing it back in my mind. I was like, did this coach just wink at me as I was like walking out of the office? And I was like, I don't know what the heck that meant, but turns out I walk out to practice like that afternoon, and my head coach pulls me aside, and he was like, Coach so-and-so, really, really liked your film, and they decided to offer you a scholarship. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, he let me call my dad. So I stepped aside, called my dad, and let him know I had gotten my first offer for football, which was huge. And I talked about how my parents sacrificed a lot for me, and one thing how I told him, like, my mom was super caring, and she always did a lot. And one thing I told my mom is that I would make sure she didn't have to pay for my college. Because I know, nowadays with, student loans and, how expensive college is, I know that's something that was definitely weighing heavy on her mind. And so that was always a goal for me. And after my freshman year, I knew I could do something with football. So I always told my mom, like, yeah, Mom, like, don't worry, like, you're not going to have to pay for college, this and that. She was like, I know, but like, I'm just being like safe. And then I got my first offer. So that was pretty cool for me, knowing that I'd be able to, go to college and, get a degree for free. And, my parents, wouldn't have that weight on their shoulders. That was pretty cool for me.
What was that phone call like? When you're on the field, the coach tells you that you officially have your first offer, and I'm sure the emotions run through you, but then that phone call to your parents.
It was really cool. My dad was super excited because he knew that was something I was, passionate about. So I kind of just remember, hearing him, celebrating over the phone a little bit. Then it was funny, like, he got so happy, he like realized it, and he kind of like had to reel it back in, and he was like, all right, we'll focus, go have a good practice, blah blah blah, like, make sure you're ready for your game. But it was really cool. Just, it was a lot of joy and happiness, because there was a lot of hard work and sacrifice on all parts, really, my parents, myself, and it just all came together into that moment, which was really cool to experience. Like, I remember that day like it was yesterday. I could literally go play that day back through my mind, and give you all the details. But that's a long story. But it was cool. It was really cool.
So then you receive your first offer. You call your parents. You tell them that you have the first offer on the table. Dad tells you to go back to practice. You eventually go home that night. I'm sure you guys had a little mini celebration. But then from that point forward, your recruiting process picks up. What was that like?
Yeah, so that was kind of like a really cool, eye-opening experience. My recruiting process took off. From that point in my sophomore year to the end of my junior year, I picked up around 30 offers.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was, going on, really cool visits, and, seeing colleges and seeing places that, I otherwise probably wouldn't have gotten to see. And it was cool. Like, I was getting, put in, newspaper articles in the Richmond Times-Dispatch. And my mom was clipping articles, hanging them up on the fridge, and all that stuff. I got invited to the Under Armour All-American game, Army All-American game, and ended up choosing the Under Armour one. But, I never thought, as a freshman, that I would be an All-American going into my, senior year. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun. I'm sure kids will tell you nowadays, like, being able to go on official visits or, visits, and spend the night at schools and, experience that and see games and stuff. It's a lot of fun, especially for, a 17-year-old kid. Before my recruiting process took off, I had never seen a college football game And, here I am going in the stadiums with, 100,000 people in them, being able just to go to a game for free and get the recruitment treatment and, free food and all this stuff. So it was a lot of fun.
Then you decide to commit to Michigan, and ultimately down the road you decommit. From that point forward, what was your process like?
So once I decommitted, obviously like my recruitment opened back up, but I had already kind of had, a list of schools that I had been to and I had interest in. So the recruiting process after that wasn't as crazy, but like the funniest part about it was like Penn State wasn't really on my radar. When I had narrowed down my list the first time, Penn State wasn't in my top 5. But, Coach Franklin and Coach Pry actually called me. I remember I was like in between classes at school, like going on like a break, and I pick up the phone. It's Coach Pry, and he was like, "Hey Garrett," like, because I met them down at Vanderbilt when they were down there, and he was like, "Hey, we're not at Vanderbilt anymore, but we're up at Penn State, and obviously we loved you, during our recruiting process down at Vanderbilt, and we think you'd be a great fit up here at Penn State. So we just want you to just come up for one visit and just, see how you like it. That's all we're asking." I was like, sure, why not? Because, my mom, first of all, loved Coach Franklin, like, when we were down at Vanderbilt. So the second I told her, she was like, yeah, we're going. So, I just came up here. I think we played, like, Michigan State or something. And that was another, like, coming up to Beaver Stadium, like, I was like, holy, like, this place is huge. And, obviously the environment, in Beaver was, crazy. But I think I fell in love more with, like, the campus and, like, the people here before I fell in love with, like, the football side of things. I remember just, like, meeting guys on the recruiting trip that I, like, had such a good time with. And, I remember that night, I think, like, Grant Haley was my host. And then we went up to, like, the 7th floor of Beaver, which is, like, they're in East now, but before East, it was, like, in Beaver Hall, like, the 7th floor is where they used to put all the football players. So we went up to, like, the 7th floor of Beaver. I met Amani there. I met Kabinda for the first time. Mark Allen was there. Marcus, like, so I met all those guys and got to spend a night with them and just kind of see what it would be like if I were to join the team. And I was like, these guys are, like, so much fun and, like, so cool. And it was so easy for myself, like, for me to, like, picture myself, like, becoming a part of, like, a team like that. So that's, like, I fell in love. Like, I knew by the end of that night, I was like, I'm coming here. Like, and I woke up in the morning, told my parents, and, they were on board. We went into Coach Franklin's office. My sister was actually there too. This is a cool story. Like, so I told Franklin, and Pryor was in there. Coach Smith was in there. I was like, yeah, I'm coming here. And my sister actually got, like, emotional. Like, she started crying and everything. And she was just like, I think she was just, like, so happy for me. So proud of me. Like, my sister started crying, and then which made my mom cry. So it was like, it was a bunch of tears, but it was happy tears, so it was really cool. It was fun.
What was that day like, leaving Coach Franklin's office, knowing that you had just found a new home for the foreseeable future?
Best feeling in the world. My recruitment process had, like, finally come to an end. It was tough, especially with my knee injury. It was really nice to know that, Franklin and their staff, had the faith in me, to still be the football player I was before I got hurt. I found a great school like Penn State, a great university. And I knew I was going to be able to come here and grow as, like, a young man. I really felt confident in like, who I was going to be around and the coaching staff and my teammates, and just knowing I had found a place I could call, like, a second home. It made me feel really good.
What was it with Coach Franklin and Coach Pry that allowed you to believe that they were 100% confident in you, knowing that you're coming off an injury and you don't have that senior year tape like most people do in the country? But what belief did they instill within your head that was allowed you to commit to here?
Well, I think the first thing was they made it, very clear that they weren't worried about my injury. Like that was probably like in terms of talking points throughout my recruitment with like Penn State, that was probably like one of the least things that we talked about, which was very reassuring for me, because it wasn't something that it wasn't in the back of their mind, so it wasn't in my mind either that they were worried about me or my injury. And then just the confidence they gave me to come in here, they're like, we think you're going to be able to come in here and play and contribute. Obviously, when that happens, for you, everyone's journey is different, but they told me at some point that they thought they could see me contributing to this team, and I believe that too, so that was huge for me.
We only have a few minutes left with GT before he's got to head to a team meeting for preparation of Buffalo, but what are you going to miss most about this place when this season's done? I know you got a long ways to go yet, but we probably won't be able to hear from you too much, but what are you going to miss most about Penn State when you do leave here?
I think the thing I'm going to miss the most is like my teammates and just kind of like the atmosphere we have, within Lash and, after games in the locker room, like dancing around, having fun. All the friendships I've, made here, it's special. It's a special place. I know that sounds cliche, and I'm sure people hear that all the time, but, the relationships we have in the locker room, and the relationships I have with, the coaching staff here, it's something I'm never going to forget. And just kind of like looking back at my 5 years here, it's hard to pick out, a favorite memory just because there's so many of them. So I'm definitely going to miss, being able to just to interact with my teammates, the way that we do, and how much fun we have. I think we're a really, fun group, and so I'm definitely going to miss that.
GT, appreciate you stopping by, sharing a little bit about your story, and good luck the rest of the season, all right?
All right, thank you.
We'll see you next time on the Unrivaled Podcast.
Unrivaled, the official podcast of Penn State football.